the end. Myself answer questions. It's not because of all the answers.
Okay, we're open up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm Detective Diaz from the Cleveland Police Homicide Unit, and we are here for the interview of Officer Timothy Loehmann. Officer Loehmann, you are being ordered to this interview pursuant to the orders of the Chief of Police and to the established principles of Garrity versus New Jersey. The time now is 1:19 p.m. What we're going to ask from you is that you just give us an accurate account of the events that occurred on Saturday, November 26th, 2014 at 1910 West Boulevard, which is Cadell Rec. Before we get started, if we could just introduce ourselves.
Steve Kinas, Kinas, Vice President for the CPPA.
Timothy Loehmann, patrolman for Cleveland Police. Last name Loehmann.
Badge.
1231 is my badge.
Henry Hilo, Hilow, attorney for CPPA.
Ron Tim, homicide unit, I'm sorry.
That's all.
Rob Tucker, Internal Affairs.
Okay, if we could just start on from Saturday, November 22nd, what time you started work, who you were assigned with, and go from there.
I was assigned to Zone Car 1 Adam 25 with Police Officer Frank-Garmback. His badge number is 1582. Roll call took place at 14:30.
Okay, just go from there.
Okay.
Well, first off, let's just go real quick. Your partner was Frank Garmback, badge 1582. He was your training officer that day?
Yes, he is my field training officer.
All right, when did you graduate from the academy?
I graduated August 28th of this year.
Of this year, 14?
Mm-hmm.
So you've been on the streets just over a month?
Yes. I served time in the 4th District in my one-man training phase, about a little over a month, and then I've been in the 1st District on my two-man phase for about 6 weeks now.
6 weeks, okay. All right, so on Saturday you reported a roll call, and you're assigned with the car with Officer Garmback. What happened from there?
Right immediately out of roll call, we do our usual vehicle and equipment checks, and we had a call. Our first call was to an alarm at St. Ignatius Church.
Okay.
We tended to that matter, and we heard over the radio that they were in need of a car at Cadell Rec Center for a male with a gun pointing at passerbys. So we answered that call and said we would be en route.
And what type of assignment is that? Code 1?
It's a code 1. Yes, it is a code 1. While en route, Frank, being my field training officer, said, knowing that this is a call with a male with a gun, what do you do? And I said we're going to be at like an elevated level. We're going to be very cautious of what we do. Our approach is going to be different because it could put us in harm. So Frank said, very good. He's like, now we're going to be prepared. Please, take your weapon out, just in case, because we could come under fire at any time.
Okay.
Now, over radio, we also got a description of the male. It was a black male with a camouflage hat, wearing a gray sweatshirt with the black sleeves. So while en route, Frank decided to go from the south end of the park, I believe, which is Madison, and there's a fire station right there at West 100th.
Okay.
And we entered through the sidewalk, like back area of the near the fire station over there, and went on the grass.
So that would be off West 100th Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is, it dead ends. It dead ends, and if you slip through, like, go to the side on the sidewalk, you could enter, like, the grass area of the park.
Okay. When you get the assignment for the Code 1 assignment, do you guys go lights and sirens?
We did at times, depending on traffic. I believe we did turn sirens on, and then we turned them off, depending on the flow of traffic. I believe, like I said, it was on and off, I would believe. That's how we usually run, depending on the call, the nature of the call, and the flow of traffic.
Correct.
We kind of judge the necessity of having it lights and sirens on.
Okay. So you get to 100th Street where the street dead ends to the park, and you said you go up on the curb. What happens then, or the sidewalk?
Okay, so you're entering the park, the grassy area, and immediately you see a male sitting underneath a gazebo by himself, just at a picnic table. As we are getting closer, you can the male matched the exact description that radio gave us: the camouflage hat, the gray sweatshirt with black sleeves, and it was a black male. And the male, was sitting there, and then he turns around and notices our zone car, approaching him. The male immediately stands up and he grabs a gun off the table and shoves it in his waistband.
Okay, but how far do you think you are away from him at that point?
I would say 30 yards, maybe. I would say about. I'm not 100% sure. I would say about at least 30 yards. And
Is your lights on at this point, or did you turn them off? If you remember.
I cannot remember. I would assume they would be off, but I can't 100% tell you.
Okay.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you, as a driver officer, do you control the lights and
I
sirens?
do not. At the time, my gun was in my hand, and I was focused on the suspect. And then Frank was, he was the driver, so he was, controlling the car and, making sure. And there's a lot of snow and leaves, so Frank had to really, control the car and watch what he was doing. So.
All right, so you're about 30 yards away. You see the kid get up. You see him grab a gun from the table.
Yes.
And what
and
happens?
He shoves it in his waistband in the front. Then immediately upon that, I at that point I knew he had a gun, so I opened the door slightly ajar and I had presented my weapon and I started screaming verbal commands. Put your hands in the air, put your hands in the air, let me see your hands, freeze, put your hands in the air. I said numerous times out loud, and I presented my gun, through the window, so,
Is your window down?
It was closed, I believe, not 100%, I believe it was closed. But I had the door slightly ajar open, and I was, making sure my gun could be seen by the male, so he knew that, this was not a joke, that we were serious, And as we approached closer, the male began to walk away, and it appeared like he was going to take off running. The male then.
Did your partner say anything to you when you guys observed that?
He did not say anything because I was screaming the verbal commands: put your hands up, let me see your hands, freeze. My partner didn't say anything. He was focused on controlling the car. Like I said, it was snow and grass and leaves, so he was maneuvering the car. And as we got closer, the male turned around, and that's when my partner attempted to stop, but I believe we did slide. There were like roots in the grass, I believe, from us trying to stop. Mm-hmm. So when we finally slowed down enough, I pushed the door open and had my gun presented in my right hand like this, and I was still screaming verbal commands. Let me see your hands, freeze, freeze, put your hands up, let me see your hands. And the subject, like I said, as we were coming almost to a complete stop, the subject was already facing our zone car.
So he turns to you.
He turns to us as we're almost at a stop, I would say, a near stop. And as he's turning, he looks at me, he lifts up his shirt, and he takes his other hand and reaches down and begins to pull up a weapon, a black gun. Now, at this time, I'm pushing the door open and trying to exit the vehicle. Now, the vehicle could have still been moving at a very slow speed because I believe we were sliding a little bit because of the debris, and the subject, had the gun in the abdomen area, almost raised, and I fired 2 shots, and then I attempted to take cover and move, and in the process of taking cover, I believe I twisted my ankle and slipped and fell, and I was on the ground, but when I returned upward, I was leaning on the cruiser because my leg hurt. I was at the back of the cruiser, the rear end, but I couldn't stand because I had injured my ankle. And then my partner, and what I see when I stand back up is the black male was down. My partner had his gun drawn and he was shouting verbal commands, "Let me see your hands, let me see your hands." Now the male wasn't complying right away with his hands, he was still moving them.
Where was he at this point?
He was on the ground, laying on the ground, on the cement portion of the gazebo, by in the picnic table area, and once I got up, I began yelling commands again. "Let me see your hands," because like I said, he was still moving his hands, and then once the male decided to stop moving, my partner approached and kicked what looked like a 1911 model pistol, a handgun, black handgun, and then we approached and observed the male. He pulled up his shirt, to show that the gun was removed. Like, he didn't say anything, he was just pulling up his shirt, and it also exposed the wound to the upper abdomen. And I'm not sure the order of the sequence, but my partner did render aid, and I was observing the scene 360 for other threats, and then I also, like I said, I don't know the order if Frank rendered aid first but the other part was from the recreation center. A black female came out running, screaming, saying, "You shot my brother, you shot my brother." And at that time we approached her and wrapped her up so she couldn't get near the scene or the body. And
When you say wrapped her up,
like just put our arms around her so she couldn't get any closer. And then an off-duty police officer, I believe his name was Cunningham, assisted us. He came out of the rec center, I believe. He was working in secondary employment there, and he assisted me in cuffing the black female.
Do you recall if you cuffed her or he did?
It was my pair of cuffs. I want to say that he did, but and then, like I said, the order of sequence. Then detectives came, and I believe they were with the FBI. I recognized their faces from a bank robbery the day before on Warren, but I don't know their names. I'm not familiar with them. But they were one of the first to assist, and we placed in the back of our zone car.
Who's that?
1AM25. I want to say the
You mean you placed a female?
the black female in the zone car.
Okay.
And then she continued to scream, and Frank went back once she that was taking it. Frank was rendering aid, and one of the detectives, who I believe stated he was a former medic, possibly. I'm not 100% sure. He also helped render aid, like he put gloves on, and they were tending to the male. And then the female was yelling, "She can't breathe, she can't breathe." So I went to the zone car and rolled down the back window for her so she can, breathe. And, we said, "Calm down, please calm down," And one of the detectives was assisting me. He was telling me to sit down and calm down because I injured my ankle and I could barely stand. And at that point, like, Frank, kept calling, making calls over the radio saying, EMS, hurry up, we need EMS. I believe the first medical unit to arrive was the fire department, and they tended to the kid, and then EMS came and treated him, and other officers began taping off the air. Now, once we actually were able to slow down and observe what happened, then we did realize that it was a juvenile. We were not sure of his age, but at that point we could notice that it was a juvenile, and then also the magazine of the 1911 looking model weapon. The magazine fell out of it when Frank kicked it, and you could tell there was no it was not bullets in it. It was like a BB type weapon.
All right. You guys are obviously in a marked police car, correct?
Yes, we are.
All right. And how were you dressed that day?
I was dressed in my usual uniform, my navy blue slack shirt. I wear a tie.
CPD patches?
I CPD patches, my badge. I keep a run sheet in my, between my buttons of my shirt. I have my duty rig on with handcuffs, my duty weapon with my Glock Mile 17. I have another pair of cuffs and my ass baton. I have my flashlight, my radio, my taser, my OC spray, and then two set of spare magazines in the front.
Okay. Do you have a secondary weapon?
I do not carry a secondary weapon.
All right. When you did fire your weapon, you said you fired how many times?
I fired twice.
2 times.
Fired twice, and then per our training, we're not supposed to stand still. We're supposed to move. So fired twice, and then, tried to get some kind of cover, which I tried to behind the cruiser, as almost like a point of retreat, which we're also trained like retreating areas, like using the cruiser as, some type of concealment or cover. But like I said, in doing so, I injured my ankle, and I was on the ground, and it was hard for me to stand when I came back up. And also we were taught in the academy, it said that your cruiser is your coffin. So I wanted to get out of the cruiser as fast as possible, because the male presenting a weapon was an immediate threat to myself and my partner. So I reacted in such a way that I was trained in defense, firing 2 shots, and rendering the suspect down.
Okay. When you did fire your weapon, do you know about how far away you were?
It was approximately 10 feet, I would say.
And at the time you fired your weapon, did he actually have the gun in hand?
Yes, it was like partially in his waistband. He lift up his shirt and present like a clear, cut image that his hand was going down into his waistband, and he was pulling upward, the weapon.
Did he say anything to you or your partner at any time?
He did not. He did was, he lifted up his shirt, and that way we could see that there was no, the gun was out of his waistband, and that he was shot in the upper abdomen, and he kind of pretty much just moaned. He didn't say anything to me, at least. My partner mostly was the one tending, to the suspect, and I was observing the scene, all around for other threats.
Do you recall when you guys were pulling up that your partner was telling you that he was getting ready to run?
I can't say I recall that, but just the boy's actions. When he grabbed the gun, put it in his waistband, he was walking away from his own car, and it looked like it did appear that he was going to run.
Okay. Well, during that time, you're giving commands to this man.
Yes, that's
to raise
correct.
His hands.
Yes, let me see your hands. And at that time, my focus was on his hands and the area where he shoved the gun, which was his waistband. So, like I said, he matched the perfect description that as radio gave it to us. So, we had every reason to believe that this was the black male that we were looking for, and even in addition to additionally we saw I witnessed him take the gun, shove it in his waistband, and proceed to walk away.
All right. At some point, right after the incident, did somebody confiscate your weapon from you?
Sergeant Rutherford did.
Okay.
She took my weapon, and then when I was being treated by EMS, Deputy Chief Tomba took my 2 magazines.
When you handed your weapon over to Sergeant Rutherford, was it in the same condition after shooting?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Did you take your magazine out? Anything
No,
like that?
I did not reload a magazine. I just returned it back to my holster once the threat was clear.
Okay. And you said you gave your 2 spare magazines to Commander
Deputy Chief Toma.
Okay. And what, your left ankle was injured?
Yes, my left ankle is injured. I was treated by EMS, and I could hardly walk on it. I had to, be assisted, by other officers, and I was sent to Fairview Hospital, where they took X-rays.
What's
And
wrong with it?
they said it appeared that there was no fractures, but it was a severe sprain. It was swollen. Immediately after, it was probably almost 10 minutes. I would say almost 10 minutes after I removed my shoe and sock, and my ankle was swollen, to about the size of a tennis ball.
Somebody did come out and photograph you that night?
Yes, they did. At the hospital, they photographed my ankle, and now the current state of my ankle is it's really bruised now. It almost looks like I'm wearing a black sock. The swelling has gone down now, but the bruising is worse.
Any other injuries?
No, that was the only injury, was my left ankle.
Did you have any exposure to blood?
No, sir.
At any time did you hear your partner fire his weapon?
He did not.
What time of day does this take place?
This took place at 3:30. Was 3:30 p.m. is when we got the call, so it's daylight hours. We arrived shortly afterward. It only took us approximately 2 minutes to get down to that area.
What were the conditions outside today?
It was, I would say, partly cloudy, but daylight. So that's how you could view the weapon so well, and the subject, and
It had
matching
snowed the
perspective.
night before.
Yes, so there was snow on the ground, and we were in a park with trees, so there was leaves on the ground and grass. So, like I said, it was difficult probably for Frank to maneuver the zone car, and also, like I said, for me trying to, get out of the line of fire. If the black male did, return fire, I slipped and twisted my ankle and fell, because of the conditions.
When you did fire your weapon, were you actually outside the vehicle?
I had the door propped open, and I probably was in almost like a halfway crouched manner. I wasn't fully standing up, I would say.
Could you stand up?
I was
Kind of
probably
like
about like this,
Okay.
and I believe I shot just with one hand.
So
Not-
this would be the door?
Door. This would be the door.
Because you're
Right.
the passenger.
Right.
So-
Right. I am the passenger.
This was the car, the seat that you would have been in?
Yes.
And you're out of the door now?
Yeah, I'm in the doorway, and the subject's about, right where he is, but a little bit farther. And I fired 2 shots, and then, like I said, I tried to go to the rear of the zone car for cover. So I probably, I was not standing fully up and full presentation like this. I was, it was that quick where the black male turned, lifted up his shirt, grabbed, reached in his waistband, pulled up the weapon, and that's, at that time I was probably about like this, and that's when I had to fire 2 shots and attempt to gain cover.
And let me, while you're still up,
Sure.
when relax for a second.
Okay.
When you see him at the picnic table,
Mhm.
okay, he made motions before with the gun being down, and with his right hand, he took something off the table.
Yes,
Which
the gun.
was the gun.
Yes.
Okay. And then when he puts it back in his waistband, you said, is he standing at that point?
Yeah, he is standing. He stood first, I believe, to create room to place it in his waistband, I believe, and then he proceeded to walk away like he was still under the gazebo,
Okay.
walking away.
Which would be towards north?
Towards the recreation center.
Okay. And at that point, what do you think's happening?
I thought that he was going to take off, and I believe my partner thought the same thing.
When you say
That's
take off, what do you mean?
like running, like he was going to run,
Okay.
and try to elude us, and that's why like our cruiser, we continued to approach the male because his back was turned to us, and he was walking away from the cruiser towards the rec center, so it did seem like he was going to run from us, run away.
Okay. Did you make a comment at all? Do you say he's gonna go, he's gonna run?
No, I believe like there was no communication between Frank and I because I was yelling the whole time, let me see your hands.
But there was communication with you prior to you coming down 100th Street.
Yes, yeah,
Did you
that
discuss-
was discussed how we were going to approach the scene. That was en route, like before we hit the park.
Okay. So now you're back you're coming through the park.
Mm-hmm.
He stood up, he put the gun, which he showed us in his waistband.
Yes,
in
in
the
his
great room.
waistband,
And you think he's going northbound.
Yes, towards the rec center.
All right. And then at that point, he turns back to come westbound? Turns
He
towards you?
he faces like to probably check to see where we were.
Mhm.
And he turned and faced our zone car, like you said, westbound, and that's when he began, like when he saw that we were like behind him, like approaching him, that that's when he pulled up
Okay.
his shirt and
Let me
reached.
stop you there.
Okay.
You made a comment before that you went through some ruts or something like that. What?
I was saying that we. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe we did slide a bit. I believe Frank tried to stop
Did you
the car.
feel the car pulsating?
No, I did not. I was focused on the subject's hands and his waistline because I knew there was, a gun involved.
Right. When do you think that you opened up the door and presented your weapon? How far away were you from the guy at that point?
Like I said, about 10 feet, because at that time the subject had already turned around and faced our zone car.
So you don't open up the door.
If the door's already open, it's slightly ajar, because I opened it to yell commands, like the verbal commands from the start when I saw him take the gun and put it in his waistband. So all I had to do was push it open.
Okay. And how far away were you at that point where you opened up the door to yell commands?
When I initially yelled commands, or
Yes.
from when we were right next.
You made a comment that you opened up the door to yell commands when you saw the gun on the table and you started putting it in his waist.
Mhm.
How far away were you at that point?
I would say between 20 and 30 yards at least. I could be wrong, but I would say 23 yards. But I was screaming in a loud manner so it could be heard, and like I said, I presented my weapon, so it could be seen through the window to know that this was an emergency incident, and that this was not a joke, and that
Okay.
that there was a severe threat.
For purposes of the video,
Yes.
you are the passenger officer.
I am.
You are traveling, which would be northbound.
Yes, towards Brisbane.
And so you would have your right-handed.
Yes, I am
So
right-handed.
your weapon's out, and you would have to reach a little bit across with your body to open up the door.
Yeah, to open up the door. At that point, I was probably seated. This is like the cruiser car. I was probably seated like this.
Okay.
Get ready. I was ready. For any type of action. Like if he took off running. To get out of the cruiser, or if he did turn around and fire, that I would be ready to react to that.
Okay.
So I was preparing myself. As Frank, as my training officer, he told me to be prepared for anything, and the elevation, the level that we were at, it got higher and higher and higher, just because first you see him, the male matching description, but then you see the gun. And then now he's walking away, and now he's presenting the gun. He's pulling out his waistband. So your levels were getting higher and higher and higher, and the threat just became incredible. Where I had to make the decision fast, because Frank and I were in immediate danger. If the subject did pull out the gun and present it and point it towards us, I would have been shot, and possibly my friend, my partner would have been shot. especially due to the close proximity that we were at, we were easy targets, and plus I was stuck in the doorway and my partner was still seated in the driver's seat, so we were basically sitting ducks.
Okay. You made a comment just there that if he pointed a gun at you, you would have been shot.
Yes.
Did it get that far?
He did not. The farthest he got was raising it to about his abdomen level. He did not punch out or present it, because when he got about this far, that's when I shot.
Why?
Because I believed there was a threat to myself and my partner, and it was, in order to kill us or harm us.
So you thought what?
I thought I was going to die.
And why?
Because he had a weapon, that at close proximity, and he was going to use it against us because, to the facts, that the radio gave us, that he was pointing a gun at other people, and, he, and no doubt in my mind that he was going to, present to us and, possibly harm us or even kill us. There was no doubt in my mind that threat was there, and I had to take action to protect the lives of myself and my partner.
Anyway, let's go back once again to the gun.
Sure.
All right. You say it's with his right hand?
I believe it was with his right hand. One hand had the shirt,
Okay.
and the other was reaching down in his waistband and pulling up.
So you see his hand on the weapon?
Yes, yeah.
Where at on the weapon?
Like in a grip on the,
Okay.
the grip of the gun.
And then can you see the gun coming out?
It was. He was pulling it upward towards his abdomen.
All right. And at that point is when you're out of the car and you fire 2 rounds.
2 rounds, yes.
And why'd you fire 2?
I fired 2, and I also wanted to get out of the position that I was in, because I was trapped in the doorway, and if I was fired upon, like I couldn't go backwards, I couldn't go forward or left, because the door, I was trapped in the door. So the only exit option I had was to retreat to the back of the cruiser, and even that was kind of like a far retreat given the how close we were to them. But so I was able to lunge over to the area, but like I said, I hurt myself, and I was able to get behind the cruiser for cover. But at that time, when I stood up, the subject was already on the ground.
And what does that mean?
I believe that I did hit the subject and neutralize the threat.
Is that why you didn't shoot anymore?
I did not shoot anymore, and at that time I could see his hands.
Okay.
He was moving his hands.
Let me go back
Yes.
to that. When
Sure.
he's down on the ground, is he face down?
No, he was face upward. I don't know if he rolled. I don't know how he fell because I was trying to get out of the way. But when I stood up, he was face upward and rolling, motioning and moving his hands.
Okay.
And the threat was still there at the time, even though he was on the ground, because we didn't know
But you didn't see. Did you see a gun at that point?
At that point, I did not have a good view. My partner,
But you were able to see his hand.
I was able to see his hands, so I did not fire again.
Why didn't you fire again?
Because there was no gun in his hand. There was no weapon in his hand at the time. But then, my partner was on the other side of his own car, the front of his own car, and he had a better view and saw that the gun had, fallen from his grip, next to him, a couple feet next to him, and, when this male stopped moving, my partner, he had his gun presented, and he approached, and he kicked the gun to the side.
Okay. Your gun was still out too?
My gun was still out.
And you had the suspect covered?
The suspect was covered, yes.
All right. Do you see the gun on the ground?
When my partner kicked it away, yes.
Okay. You made a comment earlier too, something about it being a 1911 Colt. How did you know that?
I'm a gun collector. I have multiple guns at home. I read on weapons. I follow history. I can identify guns, fairly easily. I read magazines. I'm a hunter, so I'm well rounded with weapons. I can recognize weapons, and to me, it looked like a military issued Colt 1911 model gun, which is a larger .45 caliber weapon.
And with your experience of guns and collecting and reading everything, what did that gun look like to you?
It looked like a Colt 1911 model 45 caliber.
A BB gun?
No, it did not look like a BB gun.
It was a gun.
It was, yes, it was a gun.
Okay.
At the time I noticed that it was a BB gun is when Frank kicked it over and the magazine fell out, and when I did move myself from the back of his own car to approach, the victim and where the gun was, then I noticed the magazine did not contain 45 caliber rounds. It appeared that it would be more suitable to contain like BBs.
Okay. At any point, did you have any contact with the suspect? Did you put your hands on him? Did you cuff him?
I did not put any hands on the suspect. My partner did. He was the one that tended the suspect.
Okay.
Like I said, I was the one making sure the scene was safe 360, because there could have been possible other threats coming from the rec center, which the first person I saw was the black female that was running towards us, and that's when I had to act and restrain her.
Okay. Did you handcuff the person you shot?
I did not handcuff.
Do you know if he was ever handcuffed?
I think he was not. He was not. He was still moving his hands. He was not cuffed, and the gun was away. So I believe it was safe enough where we could tend to the subject to his
Do you recall seeing anyone else out there with him when you were pulling up?
No, he was sitting by himself.
Do you recall seeing anyone else in the park?
There was not anyone else around in the park. It was just him at the gazebo sitting by himself on the picnic table. There was no one else, in the vicinity at all. And it was probably about 2 minutes later when I saw the black female running from the rec center, and then there was approximately 3 males standing by the rec center door, and then another police officer came out of the rec center and assisted with the black female that was running on scene.
I want to clarify one thing. Detective Diaz asked you if this person made any comments to you, and you said that when he was on the ground after he was shot that he was moaning. And prior to that, when he's making the motion to get the gun out of his waistband, is he making any comments to you?
No, he did not. He did not say any words.
Right. The only thing that was being said where you were saying, "Show me your hands,
Yes.
freeze, stop."
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. The information that you had coming to that scene was what?
The information dispatched by dispatchers when we initially got was a black male wearing a camouflage hat in a gray sweater with black sleeves. That was it. And it said the male had a gun and was pointing it at passerbys in the park, and he was in the park area, by the swing set area.
Did they give you an approximate age?
No, there was no age given. It was a black male.
Any other mention of the weapon, what kind it was?
No, there was no mention of what kind of weapon or size or anything. It was just a black male with a weapon.
Physical? Did he give you a physical description other than the clothing description?
No, it was just a clothing description. That was it.
No height or weight?
No height or weight, no.
You went to the hospital.
I did.
All right. You were transported by EMS?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Cleveland EMS.
And you were on scene for how long before they transported you?
I would say approximately, about 20 minutes. I am not sure. Because at first I was told to sit down, get off my leg because I was injured. I could hardly
stand. Did you get
stand.
separated from your partner?
I was separated from my partner. Upon when other officers, Cleveland police officers, were on scene I saw officers begin to tape off the scene, and a big black male was coming from the fire station area, and he was posturing like he was gonna pump me, and he was yelling like, fuck the police, and you shot my brother. And at that time I figured that was his brother, and the police he was posturing to like hit a police officer, but the police placed his arms around him and they cuffed him and took him off.
Did you have any contact with him?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you were seated?
I was seated. I was at that time I was standing outside a cruiser, like probably resting my hand, like keeping my weight off my ankle.
Okay.
And then I did sit down in another cruiser. It was probably the cruiser that was like, I would say, closest to our zone car. Probably the second, I'm not sure, but probably the second responders from our department's cruiser. And I sat in the front passenger seat. And at that time I was approached by, later was approached by Sergeant Rutherford, where she, checked on me, made sure I was okay, and then I gave her my firearm.
Okay, so you did not have a chance to talk to Officer Garmback?
I did not, no.
Okay.
No.
Since this event, have you had an opportunity to talk to him?
When we returned to the district, Officer Garmback and I were separated for hours because I was being treated at the hospital in East Lansing.
On that point, you said you were at the scene for a good 20 minutes?
I would say at least 20 minutes.
Okay, and then you were transported to what hospital?
Fairview Hospital. And I was in the back of the ambulance for a long time, and that's when other members of the police department came to talk to me. That's when Deputy Chief Tomba took my 2 magazines along. I believe he was with Commander McCartney. Steve was one who showed up.
Did anybody from the use of deadly force team talk to you at that point?
No one talked to me at that point. It was
When were
just
you
EMS personnel.
When were you actually interviewed by the use of deadly force?
I was interviewed by them at the hospital. Tucker, you were the first to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Then Andre Cisco showed up from the Employee Assistance Unit, and Jeff Fulmer showed up, and then Detective Diaz showed up, and that's when we had a discussion of the events that took place.
All right.
Had you talked to your partner prior to that?
I did not.
Okay. So when I interviewed you, you hadn't talked to.
I had
your
not.
partner?
No, he was still on scene, and I was being treated at the hospital. The only officer that was with me was Lou Kitko, who assisted me in walking and was presiding over me because I did not have my weapon at the time, and Lou Kitko presided over me, and he did very
At what
good
point
job.
did you get your secondary weapon today? Was it replaced?
In the hospital, hours later, one of the detectives from the hospital, or the homicide unit, returned. I don't know his name. I see him here today, but
Sandoval.
he returned me a duty weapon and my magazines.
Okay. What ankle did you injure?
I injured my left ankle.
Okay, when you left the hospital that night, were you able to walk on your own, or did you have crutches?
I was not. They gave me Motrin, a prescription for Percocet. They wrapped my ankle, and they gave me a air cast and a set of crutches. So I was using the crutches, and also Officer Kitko, assisted me with, getting in the cruiser, and
Can you give me about how long you were at the hospital?
I would say at least 2 hours.
Okay. Were you able to come back to the scene and assist us with a walkthrough?
I was not able to come back to see. My ankle was, injured to the point where I could not stand on my own, and I, was in pain.
Plus you were being treated, right?
I was being treated also, so I did not return to the scene that night at all.
Okay. Based on that, we would like to see if we get a medical release for your medical records for that day for that treatment.
Certainly.
Okay? And we'll discuss
Okay,
that.
sure.
Yeah, all right. We'll discuss that. Since this time, after you were interviewed, gave your initial verbal statement to Detective Diaz, did you have conversations with your partner?
The only conversation that I've had with my partner was after I was released from the hospital and after he left the scene. we were reunited. He picked me up from the hospital and took me to district. We may have briefly talked about the incident, but mostly we were working on paperwork, completing our duty, and I also had like paperwork from the hospital, and we had report, just general paperwork to take.
So you didn't rehearse your stories or anything?
Not really. I mean, we talked probably briefly about it, just making sure we're okay.
So what you told Detective Diaz that night, what you told us tonight is what happened?
Yes, that's what happened.
Okay. I have one other question. I forgot what I was going to ask. That's bad.
You remember.
Oh. You said that you hit the streets out of the police academy, Cleveland Police Academy, on August 28th.
Yes.
What was your appointment date to our department?
It was March 3rd, 2014. That's when I was appointed to the academy. That was our first day of the academy. And the academy is approximately 6 months long. And then we are sworn in and detailed to a district to continue our training.
Okay. Prior to coming to the Cleveland Police Department, do you have any prior experience with law enforcement?
I was sworn in by the Independence Police Department, and I attended the Cleveland Heights Police Academy, but I resigned in the early stages of my training with the Independence Police Department. So I've been trained, but I would say my experience on the street is almost to none.
Is what you've gotten through us.
Is what
Cleveland.
is my experience on the street is all through Cleveland.
Okay. When did you go through Cleveland Heights Academy?
I started the Cleveland Heights Police Academy July 11th of 2012.
And when did you resign from them?
I resigned from the Independence Police Department December 5th of 2012.
And why was that?
Personal reasons I resigned for.
Okay. Did you know that you were going to get hired by Cleveland at that time?
I did not, but I was pursuing to go to another department. Shortly afterward, I was on lists of other police department and was pursuing to take tests for other police department,
Okay.
preferably bigger police departments.
Okay. Any military?
I do not have any military experience. I'm a college graduate.
Okay. Where'd you go?
I went to Cleveland State University, where I obtained my bachelor's degree in criminology and sociology. And I also have a associate's degree from Cuyahoga Community College in law enforcement.
I think you went to get the medical release, and we'll ask at this point. I'm sorry, do you have any questions?
No.
We'd like to take a formal written statement from them.
We'll wait for written statement, rely on the video.
Okay, all right. Any questions? Any
None by
concerns?
me.
Steve?
Any questions?
I do not.
Officer Loehmann, is there something that we missed, something that we need to know, anything?
Not at this time. What I present is the events that happened on that day.
Okay. This is a Garrity form, which we talked about at the beginning. I'm sure Attorney Hilo here talked to you about it, so we'll let you guys sign where you need to. So,
Okay.
I thought we had two, but we'll just make out.
There's no T in my name, right?
There is now. I didn't do that, sorry.
Yeah.
The last one, at least you got your name on it, I didn't.
We were saying before.
Oh,
You're like Nostradamus.
All right. I'm going to end the tape right now, because all we need is the medical release, all right? It's getting hot in here.
You won't appreciate this, look at the top. Okay, good, we'll talk about it.